Thank you so much. Once again, thanks for having me here. And if I talk a lot of nonsense, that's because I'm totally jet lagged since I just arrived. But that's always my excuse. I always have an excuse for not doing well in life. I left for US about 16 years ago, hardly having left anywhere on my own within India. I'm from Bangalore, studied in Mount Carmel College, went in for my MBA program to US. And I thought I knew all of US, all of its culture, thanks to the movies that I had seen, thanks to the books that I had read, etc. So my first experience, obviously you're all on your own, whereas here you have a lot of support network, you have friends who pick you up, blah, blah, blah. I had a brother in US who used to be in California, and I decided that I needed to be as far away from him as possible. So I decided to move to Philadelphia, which was on the other side, on the East Coast. What I didn't bargain for was this freedom that I yearned for so much comes at a cost. I was on my own. I got the first taste of it when I walked into a fast food restaurant, a student, careful about money. All I had was about $4,000. And I got the shock of my life when I first went in to sign my rental agreement. So I said, okay, I got to be careful about money, I got to be cheap. And so I walked into a fast food restaurant and I said, okay, how difficult can that be? I looked it up, there were nice pictures, and I could pick and say, okay, I want number 2. What followed after made me feel the most stupid person on earth. It took me at least about a week to realize what the heck did she ask for, but she just asked me for here to go. And that was something I had never heard in my life. She repeated it, the poor thing again. And believe I was ready to run away from there. Food, no food, I don't want it, I'm gone from here. And I think she too was at the end of it, she must be like, oh my God, this is one Dumbo customer I have. She said, for here? Like really slow. And I don't know what, I just nodded. And then I got it on a plate. After that, I decided I was never, ever going to step into a fast food restaurant, even though, I mean, the excuse I have for everyone is, of course, that, hey, I am a food snob. I don't like fast food. But you know what? It's the embarrassment of that first time which stops me from going there anytime again. So you have similar experiences every place. I think I'd have a story, but I think that was one of the worst that I had. And fully knowing I knew English very well, I thought I was a pretty decently smart person. I thought I could, understand different accents, but personal experience was a total different ballgame.
Yes, words are supposed to mean exactly what they're intended to mean. So an S is an S, a no is a no. So how direct and specific one has to be understood in US, or for that matter, any Western countries?
I would have to say it's been different in the case of different countries. US, I believe, in my opinion, is a lot more direct than any other country I have seen. Whether it was, and I would have to say my experience, things might be different from somebody else's perspective, but whether it was UK or whether it was Germany where I spent some time, it was a different story. Whereas in US, you had to be clear. And I'll again have to put in a caveat there. When I first went in 15, 16 years ago, it was a very different world where, like I think, Mohana, you talked about over-communicating, being extremely specific about what you had to say, etc., was very important. Now, because of the number of other, let's say I'll talk about mostly the Bay Area where I'm from, there are lots of Indians and lots of Indians at the leadership level. When I went in first, you would have like a sprinkle of probably maybe one non-white person in the leadership team and probably one woman, and mostly she used to be the HR person. Beyond that, there was nothing else. Turn the story fast forward now. I find now, especially, like I said, in most of the technology companies, you'll find about 50% of the leadership team comprising of, mostly Asian men and women. And I would say there are a lot of Indian men. So there is more tolerance towards, open-ended stuff. And I'll give you one example within our own company. When I first joined Symantec about 4.5 years ago, my first day in the office was to attend a staff meeting by our CIO. My role was that of finance at that particular time, and I straight walked into his staff meeting. We were making a decision which was going to have far-reaching implications, and that would result in a deal of about $1.3 billion, and that was like the biggest IT deal going in US at that time. My expectation after going through the rigor at HP was this was going to be a brutal free-for-all. That was how HP used to be. I used to think that people were going to kill one another because they would be so direct and, you know, so confrontational. They would be playing devil's advocate, and I was used to that. Symantec, on the other hand, and I'm not saying it was Symantec itself, I'm saying that passing that, you know, taking the time forward as to how things have changed. When a decision was being made, people were quite casual about it, and I was quite surprised. It was like, you know, are we reaching the Asian model of kind of getting the buy-in ahead of time? Was all the pre-work done? And now we're going ahead and doing that. And I just couldn't get the sense of that. So I reached out after the meeting was over. I reached out to the CIO and I said, look, I played the dumb card again. And I said, look, I don't understand. How come nobody pushed you back on this? This is going to have far-reaching implications. And he turned around and he said, you're an Indian? And I was like, yeah, so? And he said, well, don't you guys prefer to have this kind of a decision-making afterwards? I don't expect people to come back and give me their true opinion right now. They'll come back to me after the meeting is over, like you sought me out after the meeting. So I would say, you know, I would no longer try to just put things into one particular box and say, okay, this is how it is. You got to be sensitive about, you know, what the situation is, where it is. Ideally, I would say, yes, be specific, be prepared, you know, be as clear as possible, clarify, ask for as much detail as possible, because, you know, here we're always worried because we want to put the best foot forward, right? We want to be the creme de la creme. Whereas my experience when I went back there was like, nobody cares whether you ask the most stupid question or it was the most harebrained idea or whatever. We all got respect just for that. And so accordingly, when it comes into that, you know, you have to have the EQ to be more sensitive to what the context of the conversation is, the people around, etc. are. And like I said, once again, depending upon which situation you're in, and, you know, lately, I would say a lot of the multinational companies today do understand the nuances of dealing with different cultures.
Thanks, Azra. So we'll talk about stereotyping a little later. So Azra said US has been one of the most direct countries. We have somebody who has worked in a much more direct country. So Israel is a low context country. So tell us, Madhu, how direct can people get?
Okay. Okay, so you must have heard, like typically when people visit Israel, they come back with an impression that Israelis are very rude, very impolite, very inconsiderate. You know, that's the impression.
Well, again, personally, I have to say that's a leading question. I don't think I agree with that at all.
Intentional.
So there are two aspects to that. One is personal and another one is professional, right? When it comes into the personal level, I believe that, you know, it's important to get the most out of what we have today. Kind of Christy laid in the groundwork of how people think, how people are built in, etc. So accordingly, you don't push off the results for later. You want to kind of make sure that they are measurable goals that you're going to go ahead and catch in. And on a business level, obviously, you're responsible to the stock market. You have to kind of achieve in the results. But there are examples of where people concentrate too much on that. One of the biggest companies in the Bay Area, an iconic company like HP, is paying the price for it by being too short-term focused. So I don't believe personally that everyone has to do it. You have to keep your eye both on the long term as well as the short term. My husband works for a biotech company, and there is a strong overlap with the pharmaceutical industry. There, when you talk about the product life cycle, is about 18 to 20 years. Majority of them don't come to fruition. Majority of the medicines that are being used in India are coming through those same companies from US. Imagine if they were short-term focused. That's why I had a problem with that question, because I don't believe. So I believe, in my opinion, I already defended that. I believe that I'm totally Americanized, and a lot of people have accused me of being so. I believe we have a happy balance between the two.
Thanks. So, TV, it is good practice to document cultural expectations and differences. So, as a project management professional, in which phase and where would you document these?
So clearly, I think it has to follow the natural rhythm of team formation as well. And as you are getting a bunch of people together in a room and say, okay, just because you are now going to be together, it doesn't make you a team. I mean, we know the team formation model, the forming, norming, performing, storm, right from the storming. So the same way, I think if I put on the hat of a project manager, I think when the initial stages, we are nailing down each of the issues in terms of laying down the protocols for communication, how people are going to communicate with each other so that we don't misunderstand what will be the frequency of communication, what will be the mode of communication, are we going to have teleconference calls, are we going to have periodic status reports, etc. So I think in the beginning stages, during the kickoff, during the planning stages, nailing these kind of communication protocols down into a communication plan might be a good idea, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page.
So, Azra, America is a melting pot of cultures, whereas the American culture is really individualistic. And people are expected to hit the ground running, and promotions are based on how much initiative people take. So, you've been successful. Tell us some success mantra to be promoted quickly and to be successful in the global project management arena.
I got into trouble just for speaking out my mind a month ago. So my simple answer would be ask. Be very, very clear of what you want, and then make sure, you have everything backed up. So that you just kind of, like a lot of us nurse a lot of ambitions, right? But we really have to kind of follow through by identifying the kind of skill sets that you already have, the talents that you have, and kind of building upon what you need in order to go for the next one. So talking about my personal experience, I have had a lot of international rotations, obviously, in the 15 or 16 years that I've been out of the country here. I have also been consistently promoted very regularly, and I have taken different roles in different companies. I'm one of those people who starts getting extremely edgy if I keep doing the same job over and over again. What I would do, let's say I'm talking about a job rotation part, right? I would barely move into a new role 2 or 3 months into that I start plotting for the next one. What should be my next move? What should I be kind of asking in for? And so accordingly, I lay the groundwork. A lot of preparation goes for it. A lot of people kind of just come and say, oh, you're just plain lucky. People like you. That's the reason why things happen. But I'm saying this in all honesty. Every single time when I do that, I have never waited till a job becomes available. I always raise my hand, I write my job, and I say, I want X, Y, and Z. And then I kind of keep making sure that I share what I want with the people who can make that happen for me. Once again, that could be a lucky part. I've been very blessed in having the right people have the right confidence in me so that I could take it forward. But that's one piece you got to know. You got to know yourself. You got to know what you want. You got to know what is needed in order to get what you need. So once you have everything lined up, I think it starts becoming easy at that time. Networking, people believe that's one thing that helps them a lot. I think probably for a lot of people it does. At the risk of sounding cocky, I will tell you I don't like doing that. I'm a lazy person. I sit back and expect people to come and make contacts with me rather than the other way around. Never done it, never done it. But that doesn't mean that you should be doing that, right? And then also from an American cultural perspective, it's not just you being nice to your boss. It's not just, kind of putting your best foot forward, trying to sell yourself over to the different people. Many a times what you will find is maybe your boss's admin would have a say. There would be some conversation going on. And that someone who has absolutely no say in things otherwise will come in and say, oh yeah, she's wonderful. She's like so-and-so. Or you would have like somebody else who probably was just trying to manage something trivial for you. So you never know what feedback is going to come out from where. So build your own brand would be my second advice. And your brand should not be specific just to one or two people. It should kind of, you have to be who you are. I was very surprised just a little while ago when my boss was diagnosed with cancer. And 1 month after that, people were trying to poach me. Right, and I felt terrible about that. I mean, there is some personal loyalty that kind of comes into it. American culture, you might say, right? But overall, to me, I was like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And then I was told, look, you got a brand. You have a brand in the company of that of a cerebral person. And here, you're acting through your heart. And that should not be it. But I decided that in the short run, maybe I'll get some flack out of that. But in the long run, it is me, my brand, my image, and my consistency as to how you go about it. So you got to realize how you want to, who are you? How do you want the world to see you? And once again, that is a part of your career progress as well. I can rattle on and on. I know we're short of time. But otherwise, I would say, once again, just know who you are and be that person. And then after that, things fall into place for you.
Thanks, Azra. We'll try to implement that. Madhu, it's very difficult to develop trust when people cannot see each other on a day-to-day basis. So you were managing Israelis from India. What did you do to develop trust? What is one best practice you would like to share with the audience to work across cultures?
Okay, yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I did a lot of prayer preparation, a lot of study, and also to the extent that I also learned a few Hebrew phrases, which were good enough to make the first impression, in the office. And also I wanted to convey that I truly mean business in the real Israeli sense. That's what I did. And I also know French very fluently and Arabic from my earlier days in Algeria. So since the Israeli population comprises of Arabs, Jews, and Europeans, so I was able to, get into a lot of small talks with some of my team members. And having lived in Algeria and being a musician myself, so I also know the Arabic rhyme music. So one instance wherein the team members were playing the rhyme music and the song which I knew, and I was unconsciously humming it, and they caught on to it, and they were very pleased, or they were rather surprised that I was able to do that. So these were all small instances which really helped. The other thing is personal connect. As I told you earlier, they are community oriented, and until and unless you connect with them personally, it's very difficult to get into their, be part of them. So, started by doing telephonic one-on-ones, and then made several trips to Israel, lived there continuously for 2 to 3 weeks, and teamwork and empathy. So like, I tried to put myself in their shoes, understood their problems, demonstrated value by solving some of the problems, so that instilled trust. To the extent that then they started inviting me to go out for lunch, dinner with them, and they also took me out to Jerusalem, Dead Sea for sightseeing, and in fact they wanted to help me to shop. And one particular point in time when a Palestinian selling a curio, and there was no one around me, and I was able to bargain it down very well, and they were amazed by the time they came that they were able to relate to that. So there were several of these instances, and then I also shared them the similarity between Indian culture and Israeli culture. It's very comparable. Fact that, women light lamps, and the social status of women in India, right? More of homemakers and men as breadwinners, very similar there. And and family-orientedness, celebrating festivals within the family, elaborate cooking, not much of fast food. So all these are simple trivia and tidbits that I went on sharing with them, which really helped me get closer to them. And to add on to what TV said, like we also conducted developing a global mindset, a workshop for the entire India team and the Israel team in one room, organized by Aperian Global, Christy is from there. So we did that program that also helped us. So one final thing, the one best practice, I think you must have got now a lot of best practices is be prepared. World is at your fingertips. All of you have smartphones. Even if you don't have time, just look it up so that, you don't surprise them.